Hi guys, it's Brooke here. I have a super quick favor to ask. When you have a moment, please take just a second to give this podcast a 5-star review. This will help me to continue the podcast and continue to bring these resources to the community. Thank you so much for that 5-star review.
That was the moment, Brooke, that it changed everything. We went from having a child who was angry and frustrated and screaming because if I can't talk to you and you don't talk to me, you're not going to talk to each other. And that's where that came from. And when we started talking to him and we started responding to him and we started acknowledging him and connecting with him in that way, he received it and the screaming stopped, right? I mean, it was almost instant. Am I remember family?
Hi guys, I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about our episode this week. This week we have a family on that is going to be talking about their journey in shifting their mindset. And this family happens to be an RDI client of mine. And what I love about them is that both the grandparents, Papa and Nana, are involved, as well as Mom. And Celeste, Paul, and Katie are such a wonderful family, full of love and openness and just really along for this journey of having a growth mindset. And so we're talking today a lot about their shift in mindset as they navigated their journey through starting their RDI program and how life has changed for them. And we also talk about this idea of presuming competence in this episode. This is a topic that I want to delve into quite a bit deeper in a future episode, but this concept does come to life in this episode, and we talk a bit about how we apply this concept in their program and how life has changed for them because of this mindset, in addition to just the value of having a growth mindset. And I talk about that on and off throughout episodes, and I think it's so important to really embrace having a growth mindset as guides to our kids, as professionals, and also instilling that in our clients and our children that we serve. And so with that, I will let the family share their story, share their life examples, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, I'm so excited to have this conversation today. Thank you for being here. I have a wonderful family team today that have been so gracious to spend their morning with me talking about things that are near and dear to all of our hearts. And before we get into our topic today, we're going to do a little introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit about this wonderful family that I am also really blessed to work with. So Jake's RDI team is comprised of his mom, Katie, and 2 grandparents, Paul, otherwise known as Papa, and Celeste, also known as Nana. And Katie is a full-time work-from-home mom. Paul is a machinist and tool maker, and Celeste is an elementary school teacher. And Jake is a vibrant 9-year-old 4th grade boy that loves to draw, swim, and is always ready for an adventure. He is learning to play the piano and drums, and he loves Disneyland and all things Mickey Mouse. Jake is learning to express himself through his AC device and is about to start the Scholars Program. Previously, Jake participated in ABA therapy for 3 years, and they began their RDI therapy with Brooke in June of 2023. And she has been a constant guiding light in their journey, and they are forever grateful to her and Tag. And through RDI, Jake is finding his voice, and they are discovering Jacob as through the process. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And we have a pleasure of having all 3 of you on today, which is very exciting. This will be my first time with more than one guest. And today we're going to be talking about this concept of having a growth mindset, but also assuming competence. And as I work in this field, I have seen the value and the power of having this kind of a mindset and how you combined the mindset of assuming competence and also having a growth mindset so that you're always looking for opportunities to grow, to support as parents and grandparents, and also how you can foster those growing opportunities for Jacob. And so it's very exciting to have this conversation because I think it's so important in our field to honor and respect the individuals, the autistic individuals that we are working with and supporting, and also to, really set them up for success so that they can learn and discover and grow and feel competent and successful. So, really excited to have this conversation with all three of you today. I know we've talked about it a lot in our work together and how valuable it is and how important it is. And thought it would be fantastic to have you on to kind of bring it to life and share stories and examples of what this looks like for your family because it's so different and unique for each family. And so I'd love to hear your, real life examples. But before we get into that topic and how we're going to spend the bulk of our time, I thought it would be helpful just to share your beginning story. Just go back to when you had the diagnosis and, what that was like, and just a little bit more about your journey from the beginning.
So my beginning was that I had no idea what autism was. For me, I thought autism was a lot like sensory processing. They don't want to be touched, they don't want to be kind of isolated from people, or they're Asperger. They're just over the top brilliant. I had no idea anything about autism. Then Jake was born, and a little bit older, we took him to Disneyland, and the look on his face when I took him through a crowd was like, I just got punched in the face. And I just by that point, I knew he definitely had autism, but I thought for sure it was he'll never be affectionate. He'll never cuddle me. He won't want me to be near him. It'll hurt him. Anyway, we went through the inland regional because we were told that he was too young through Kaiser, and he got diagnosed from a psychiatrist first, and then I learned that I was so wrong. He's affectionate, he's brilliant. It's just opened my mind to a whole different world, and grateful for it. And he just shows me every day who he is. And then through the regional, we got an ISSP, I believe. And then we went through Kaiser again. They denied us for the second time. And then the third time, he was 3 years old. And they just said, yeah, he has autism. Here's the team. Welcome to the team. And that's been our journey. And we've been taking it one step at a time now. We went through ABA, which was an interesting journey for us. Wasn't for us, but it does work. And we just took our RDI, and it's been wonderful ever since. And we really, truly get to know Jake for who he is. Anybody want to add anything? Sorry.
Sure. We had I think it's important to really stress that we gave ABA therapy, our very best. We really believed what they were saying. We implemented everything that they were saying with fidelity. It was really hard. We were told that there would be these extinction bursts and then things would get better eventually. And through that process, and I'm going to piggyback on what Katie said, we are not anti-ABA per se. It just got to the point where it was no longer working for our family. But Jake, through the process, I think just the demand, the rigor, developed some OCD symptoms. So on top of a diagnosis of autism and ADHD, now we're collecting diagnosis and adding OCD to it. And we started to see some self behaviors. We started to see him just start with some rituals that, he couldn't get out of. We call them loops, and he would just get stuck. And as ABA therapy became more and more rigorous for him, so did his symptoms. And responses, his behaviors and his dysregulation just started to escalate. So we tried desperately to find something else. And we were asking our insurance company, is there any alternative therapies? No, ABA therapy is the gold standard. It's all we will pay for. So again, we thought we were stuck until we were having a conversation with some very good friends of ours that live in Idaho, and their son is also autistic. And Holly started explaining to us that they were participating in an RDI therapy. I'll let Paul explain to you more about where Jake was at the time that we let go of ABA. Basically, we just said to them, this is not working for us. And it was difficult. I mean, they didn't understand why we were stopping. And they were explaining to us that stopping now is, you're just almost there. And we had to really step out in faith and make a hard decision. And we did. But I'll let Paul explain to you what our home was like at that transition point.
Well, I think as much as where Jake was, it's where we were too. I think that's as big an issue. Jake was very frustrated. I think he was angry. I think he was lonely. And I think he was very distrustful of us because we weren't filling his needs and he didn't understand why, I think. And we didn't understand Jake. Jacob was, from our perspective, boy, there were times when we couldn't talk in the house. Every time somebody would start to talk, he would scream. Again, he was, like Celeste said, he was self-injurious. He would lash out. He would elope. His OCD symptoms were frustrating for him and growing. He would get so frustrated because I feel he truly didn't want to do the things he was doing, but he couldn't stop himself. He was compelled to do these rituals that he had. And there were small rituals we put covers on all the light switches because the light switches were rituals. But anyhow, home life there was Jake and then there was us. It was very separate. And we got to the point where Celeste and I kind of isolated ourselves because we couldn't have a conversation around Jake because he would scream. And I think that's and then the transition happened, like Brooke mentioned earlier, one of the things we learned through the program and what we're talking about today is assume competence. And it was as simple as understanding Jacob was his own person and that, but it took a while. But there was a transition for the first, I know we keep going back to RDI, but RDI is so pivotal for us as a family. And it's helped us get to know Jake to where it opened a door of trust to us from Jake. I don't believe Jake trusted us again, to respond to him in the way that he needed us to respond to him. And he didn't trust us to hear his voice or to listen to him. And we didn't. We really disregarded Jacob. It was Jacob. We would talk about him in front of him, thinking, not even thinking about it because we would just assume that he wasn't paying attention. But Jacob hears everything and he understands everything. He's nonverbal, but he's not non-hearing. And he understands, he has a large vocabulary. And anyhow, I'm kind of rambling on, but it's the transition from, I think it all wraps up with trust and like we were talking about today, presumed or assumed competence, that we never trusted Jake to do anything on his own. We held his hand. We assumed the worst in every situation. We held his hand. We had always had hands on him. We never gave him any kind of freedom to explore because we were so afraid of what he could do to hurt himself, to bolt, to grab something sharp, to do this, to do that. And we were so afraid, or to just to be overwhelmed and lash out. We would stop what we were doing, hoping it wouldn't cause him to be overwhelmed and dysregulated and to have an episode start screaming and just we were so afraid of it that we would just, instead of assuming competence, we walked on eggshells. And that's all changed. It's in the last year and a half, the mindset of mind growth and assuming competence has created a relationship and a trust and a family. I think that we are a full-fledged 4-person family that we weren't before. We were 3 people and Jacob, and it's not that way anymore.
I mean, it's such a beautiful example of the power of, the message that you send inadvertently, when you are not assuming competence, and, how that can have an impact on everybody involved. And, it's part of what Dr. Gutstein talks about a lot, that you can get onto this path of not providing that guiding and trusting opportunity because of the experiences that you're having, and really trying to, and you experience that through his responses, and you experience that through the therapies you were experiencing, and that all of those things bring you to where you were when you started working with me, and how incredibly valuable it is to have that shift in mindset around assuming competence. What does that mean? Is sending the message to him that he is capable, and that you do believe in him, and that you do value him as an individual. And not that you were not trying to do that before, you just didn't have the awareness. And once you have the awareness, then, it really does foster and build that trust, and, that support, and that individual care that, he values from, and he benefits from. And, I remember when we first started, how you had shared, oh, we're going out to a restaurant, but we have to all be quiet. We can't talk because he'll scream. And you shared it as though it was the normal thing. Like that was your life.
It was the normal
It
thing.
was our life. If we wanted to talk to each other, we had to go sit in the car, or we had to go to a restaurant.
Actually, we had, I'm sorry to talk over, but we had a plan going into a restaurant. We had to get a booth. Not only did we had to get a booth, but it had to be a Jakey sandwich. So it's either me and Jake then mom, or mom then Jake then Papa or Dad, and he has to be in the middle. Now I'm serious. We go to Disneyland and he's sitting on his own chair.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just sitting there, and one of us can get up, and of course, someone's always there with him, but one of us can get up without the concern of he's going to dash off, and we're going to need all hands on deck.
We thought it was really cute that he could like wander around when we first had him when he was little. But then he got to the point where he grew big enough that we couldn't catch him. That started our fear plate. And then we just added to it as we went along. I mean, you should see our home. We literally have like 3 locks on every door. Our doorknobs are thumbprint identifiable. So you can't get out of the room unless an adult who's programmed in has their thumbprint to put on the door. We were very seriously concerned about losing him, legitimately losing him.
Absolutely. And I think you had a legitimate concern at that time, where, you weren't in a place where you could trust, and he could trust. And so you had to do those things to keep him safe.
Yeah.
And, I'd love to have you share a little bit about some of the beginning things that you did when we first started working on this idea of even being able to talk in front of him.
Yeah.
And how that changed, because I remember that being such a big part of your life in the beginning, of having to be very careful about what you said at all times, or even speaking to each other in the car and in the house.
Okay, I want to say that one of the first things, and I think it was, and the look on his face when we did it was profound to me, because it's a distinct memory. But once we got in, we were a few weeks, learning about this and learning and working with what we knew. We sat down with Jake, and we apologized to him. Basically, we said, Jake, we're sorry. We realized that we talked in front of you. We talked to you, and he listened. It was just he just sat there and listened to what we were saying. And I think he really took it in. Now, Jake's nonverbal, so there's not a whole lot of feedback. So we have to do a lot through his actions and facial expressions and stuff, and we just really felt like he listened. And there was a process of almost making amends with Jacob for our behavior towards him and our disregard of him as a human being at the time. And I think that kind of cracked the door for him, and he gave us that opportunity to gain back trust with him. And it wasn't 8 weeks later that profound changes started to happen. And it was basically Jake trusting us to be a help, and not just in his way, or just, not helping. Yeah. And that was it. That was, to me, that was our starting point, was just talking to him and basically making amends and having a conversation.
I love that. And it's such a valuable thing. We call that making a repair, and it's never too late to make a repair. And as parents and grandparents, we know we always are going to make mistakes. There's lots of opportunities to make repairs and, and to be honest and authentic and to be human. And that can go so far in building that trusting relationship. And I believe that he was able to receive that heartfelt repair and start to soften and start to feel that he could become open to receiving the help and the support, and that he could trust that, and that he was starting to feel safe. This show is brought to you by Therapeutic Approach to Growth. Therapeutic Approach to Growth helps families with relationship and behavioral needs. Their holistic programs are individualized to honor and respect each family and their autistic son or daughter's sense of self through programs such as relationship development intervention, naturalistic ABA, and animal-assisted services. If you're finding yourself frustrated or discouraged with your current behavioral programs and would like to see more long-term meaningful growth for you and your family, then contact TAG today at www.tagforgrowth, that's TAGFORGROWTH.com, to learn more about how to schedule a consultation or how they can offer you the help your family needs, whether in person, remotely, or in a school setting. Again, that's www.tagforgrowth.com.
And I look at it like we're also teaching him how to these skills as well, as he's teaching us as well. And it's interesting because he went from a kid who, like everybody said, who didn't trust, to was very almost guarded because he was like, they're just gonna ignore me, or they're just gonna, because that's what we were taught. And to this morning, I'm in the other room and he's like, I need some help, please, like straight up. And I was just like, okay, I'll come and help you. And it's just like, that's just normal now. It's just
It's a beautiful
totally
thing.
different. Yeah.
It's so significant because it's, showing an opportunity where he was recognizing, having a self-awareness to recognize that he needed the help, and then having the wherewithal to self-advocate for himself and express that he needed the help and get his needs met. That's no easy task. It's not something that you have specifically taught over and over. It's something that he was able to problem solve through and make the decision and communicate.
There was one pivotal moment that I can remember. Jake, I'm going to talk about you. Is that okay? Are we good with that? Yes? Maybe? No. Which one? Yes? Maybe? No. Yes? Okay. I have permission. In ABA therapy, we were told when he's having a dysregulated moment and he would have a hard time. It was a physical throw himself on the floor, kick, scream, cry episode. When he was dysregulated, we were told to ignore. We were told not to make eye contact. We were told to look away and turn our backs. And through our time with you, we learned that we needed to connect with him in that moment because he needed us. And we had an incident right here in my office, just not more than 3 feet away, where he was on the floor and his words were, I'm broken. And he was crying. And hard if I get through this, we put hands on him and we said, we're here. We're right here with you. And you're not alone. We can see that you're upset. Your eyes are watering. Your legs are kicking. And we just reflected for him what we saw. And we said, we can see that you're having a very hard time and it's okay. We're going to get through this and we're going to get through this together. And it was that moment that changed everything. Going from one ideology of ignore, don't give any attention to the behavior, right? To responding to a child who was really struggling and two of us, his mom and I, sitting there together with him, just putting hands on him if he would let us. He didn't at first. He couldn't even tolerate touch, but sitting there and just talking to him and calming him and seeing what helped and what didn't and just being responsive. That was the moment, Brooke, that it changed everything. We went from having a child who was angry and frustrated and screaming because if I can't talk to you and you don't talk to me, you're not going to talk to each other. And that's where that came from. And when we started talking to him and we started responding to him and we started acknowledging him and connecting with him in that way, he received it and the screaming stopped, right? I mean, it was almost instant. Am I remember family?
I mean, what a pivotal turning point. And I think, as you mentioned, the acknowledgement, just being there to hold space.
Yeah.
And to say, I'm with you. I hear and I see your struggle. And we're not going to pretend like it's not here. We're not going to leave you alone in this.
Yeah.
As a human, we need those opportunities to connect with others, to feel that we're not alone, to feel that we are in relationship.
Right.
That's what keeps us going. And that's what makes us feel fulfilled and gets us through those hard times. And that was such a significant moment for him to be on the receiving end. What a gift you gave him to feel heard and to feel valued and to feel that he was in relationship. He was part of an ecosystem, a support system that was going to be there for him and hold that space for him. You don't necessarily have to have all the answers in that moment. You just need to be there to hold space. Say, I'm with you. I got you. I see the struggle and I'm with you. And
And Jake's, has his challenges and he still gets dysregulated and he still has moments like that, but they're moments and we help him through those moments. And it's not a magical cure, but it's tools to deal with a situation and help Jake through it. And I think that that's the biggest deal, that we have those tools now, and he trusts us to help him, because when he's dysregulated, he used to come out of being kicking and screaming, and he would be able to calm himself. And Jake's nonverbal, but he would say over and over again, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And it was heartbreaking because we had no idea. All we could do was rest assured, please don't be sorry and such, before we had the tools. And that's all changed. It's Jake still gets dysregulated. He still has his episodes, but they're very short-lived, and we're there to help him through it in the moment. And it's a different world.
Even if it's just sitting there and letting him know that, hey, I'm here when you're ready. And just kind of, I put my hand just a little close to him, not touching him, just a little close to, hey, if you want mommy, I'm here. And sometimes that just does it. It's just moments and he's done, comes over, cuddles, and is on with his day.
Yeah. And his dysregulation used to last 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah, if you're
That
lucky.
was the big part of the, collecting data, was like, how long did it last? How long do his episodes last? The words were completely different too, right? Throwing a fit was the old language for us. We had to learn a whole new vocabulary. Dysregulated moment, a moment of, he's just having a dysregulated episode rather than throwing a fit or
Having a tantrum
having a tantrum. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
The words that you use sets the mindset, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just gonna say, and the wording, it would always scare me, but it was probably a mama thing, but I always thought, like, he's gonna have tantrums when he's an adult and I'm gonna be gone, and I'm gonna have to leave him with somebody and he's not gonna be able to handle. And now going through just this short amount of process, I feel, and I felt since the beginning, he's gonna be all right. He's gonna be a little independent dude, and he's gonna be able to have the tools he needs to get through life. And that's such a relief as a mom to, because that's my goal. I raised him to be independent. We all do.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I hear from moms, that they are concerned about what's going to happen when they're gone. And you're giving him the opportunity and the tools and the wherewithal and the competence to be successful in life, and that's what it's all about. Having a high quality of life and feeling important and feeling of value to your family, to the community. That's the path that you're on. And I'd love to, have an opportunity just to share briefly before we wrap up some of the things that you do on a daily basis that are so unique to your family and to Jacob. And, I think it's a testament to how individualized each program is, but how you're giving him opportunities for growth each and every day. And we talk about that growth mindset and how powerful that is, and giving him opportunities to problem solve, to be resilient, to think through moments. And these are just little moments that you insert throughout your interactions that lead to something really big. So I know you've had some really special ones with the holidays. We're right in the holiday season right now, and it's a great way to incorporate these little opportunities through the holiday experiences and decorating. And I'd love to have you share just a few examples of what does that look like? How do you see yourselves working on that growth mindset and your daily opportunities with him?
I have a story. Actually, we used to be very tight on, we hold hands. We don't, I mean, our outings were like, we went to Target and I'd walk him down the aisles. Or if we went to like SeaWorld, he's like glued or in a chair. It was very like, you go from here to there. We went to Disneyland to a dance party, and I went to go dance with him. Just no holding hands, no. He's dancing next to me. He's staying near me. He's watching for me. He's looking at the characters, and there is so many distractions all around us. I mean, I was looking around and was like, well, what's that? And he was still looking for mommy, then looking for Nana Papa. He was looking around, seeing where Nana Papa were. And it was such a difference. And even decorating the tree, I'm not like, oh my gosh, he's gonna break that. He's gonna break that. He's gonna break that. I'm just like, here, dude, hang it up, hang it up.
And he
You
still
know?
broke an ornament. I mean,
Yeah,
he
but it was an
tried
accident.
to
But
screw it up and it dropped and it broke. And, it was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to get the vacuum and we'll clean it up.
but it was like one, and then he didn't.
Yeah.
He's like, oops.
Yeah, he's able to handle it. And that's also a normal experience, right? I mean,
He's 9. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a round ball, and he's 9. Come on, right?
oh, yes. My mother-in-law broke an ornament this year. So even adults break ornaments. It just happens. It's part of decorating a tree, and being resilient and handling that and moving on and not letting it bring you down.
I think along with stories, the thing that Jacob loves is to help and to be a part of. And I think that, and that's what, we said in the introduction, that Jake's always up for an adventure. For Jake, an adventure is just being a part of whatever it is we're doing. From unloading bins, he helped me unload bins from our closet for Christmas decorations. And he was on one end of the bin and I was on the other end of the bin. And we were grunting and groaning and carrying these things out to the living room for decorating. We had some winds and blew a couple covers of the Christmas lights off the house along the eaves. And he watched me climb the ladder and fix one. And then I looked at him and he had a cover to another one. I said, Jake, your turn, you do it. And he was so jazzed. It was a little 5-foot step ladder and he went right to the top of it and reached on his tippy toes, but was able to fix this Christmas light and screw it in. And look on his face when he was done, he just kind of looked, and that total look of satisfaction and accomplishment on his face was just neat. And it's those things. It's that the difference is with when we get to assume competence, that means we get to do things and Jake gets to be a part of whatever it is we do. And that's the biggest change probably in the last year or so, that we've been working along these lines, is that Jake, instead of making accommodations for Jake, Jake's just included. And
He's the
Jake,
fourth.
yeah, he's the fourth. He's one of four. And we do make some accommodations for Jacob, but we make accommodations for me and for mom and for Celeste too. And
Mhm.
it's just they're just different. And I think that mindset and that mindset of inclusion just fosters, he's just up for anything. And you ask him for help from Jake, could you toss this in the trash? To Jake, can you fix the Christmas light or help me with the bins? Man, he is just up and at him. And just because he wants to be included, and we don't hold his hand, we don't guide him, we assume, like any other child, we allow Jake to make mistakes, and we allow Jake to ask for help before we just jump in and do things. And that has changed Jake's outlook on himself, and it's given him self-esteem and the willingness and the ability to try new things on his own and be excited about
This little thing that used to devastate him. Like anytime he made a mess, it would be he's devastated, walk away, because then we would kind of shoo him away from the mess and clean it up. He just spilled water, like, I mean, 10 minutes ago. And he already was like, okay, well, I know what I need to do. I'm gonna go get some paper towels. I told him where it was, and he went, cleaned it up. It was no big deal. Not even like, a blip. He's good. He would have been devastated, and just it would have been, okay, that's another thing that just happened and I have to clean up. And then he's like, okay, well, I make a mess, so let me go through my list. I know what I need to do. It's like he's just a little independent dude, like just takes care of himself.
I think that is so key, is that idea that I'm capable, that identification with himself, that he's capable, he's competent, he can handle things, he can problem solve, he can be resilient, he can seek help when he needs it. That changes your life when you have that awareness, because it dictates how you respond to things in this messy world that we're living in, when things are so unpredictable. We can't predict when something's going to spill, or something's going to break, or somebody's going to be confused by something we say, or, these things happen all the time. And so I think that's really what helps us be successful in life, is believing in ourselves and knowing that we can be resilient and capable, and we can respond in the moment in a dynamic way. And, that leads to us handling life in so many ways. And it's just a beautiful thing. I think you all said it so well and really brought it to life in your own experience. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to share your story and your own experience, hoping that this will help families out there that, are looking for support, or maybe feeling stuck, or maybe just got a diagnosis and not sure where to go. I think hearing each other's stories is so powerful, and it's such a great way to help others and to teach others, and really gather information for others. So if you had anything that you could speak, if there was any family out there that maybe just got a diagnosis, or maybe just feeling stuck and not sure what to do, I'd love to have you kind of end with, any sort of advice that you would give those families. I think our families in this field are so supportive of each other and really helpful to each other. And I'd love to give you that opportunity just to kind of speak to those families that are out there that are listening right now.
I can go real quick. I'm going to say mine because I would say that the biggest change for me in my mindset was I stopped talking at Jake and I started talking to him. That was a big key, just talking to Jake instead of at him.
I love it. It's huge.
For me, there's a couple things. One, from the very beginning, is that there's more out there. There is more out there. There isn't one way. There is more out there. You're not stuck in one thing or the other. And that if you need the tools, there's so much out there. And like my dad said, he's a person. You know, you gotta treat him like a person and assume competence. That's the other one. But mostly there's more out there. You're not alone or stuck in one place.
I would say, we're a family of faith. So I would say watch and listen and be open, because God will send you, the universe will send you whatever it is that you believe. They'll send you the tools that you need. I mean, we connect the dots for us. The other day we sat there and said, how did we get here? Let's go back. Let's go all the way back. And it was that conversation, that first conversation with our friends in Idaho, that sparked all of this discovery. So conversation about RDI, and then explore, be curious. Katie said, there's not just one way. And so don't accept a closed door. Find the key, open the door, go explore the universe and find your way. Find the right person. We are so grateful to you, Brooke, for your guidance and your wisdom and your steadfastness. I mean, it's been an amazing journey and you've been pivotal in that journey. Find your person, find your therapy, find your resources. Music therapy. Jake is a musician. He plays the drums and is learning to play the piano. Find whatever it is that speaks to your child's personality and heart and build it from there.
Mhm. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think that message of hope and not giving up and knowing that their resources are out there. And, it has to be unique to your family. It has to feel right to your family. And every family is different and every individual is different. And so it might look different for every situation. And, I think that's what it's all about, is just knowing that there are resources out there and then not giving up and really, being curious, as you said, and taking that time to reflect and think about what feels right. And you know when it feels right and you know when it doesn't feel right. And I think, that is so important. Kind of a message that I really like to send over and over is, as parents and grandparents, you have to trust your instincts and you have to listen to that gut feeling and know that you know what's best for your child. Professionals, there's so many professionals out there and they have all this knowledge and great insight, but at the end of the day, you know your child the best. And to trust that instinct, wholeheartedly, and listen to it, and listen to that listen to your faith, listen to, whatever resonates with you as you get those messages and that feeling as you're making those decisions. So thank you so much for having this conversation today. It was beautiful. I'm so glad Jake could join us too. If you hear him in the background, he was a part of our conversation. He's over here smiling and has been dancing and bringing so much joy as we're talking through all these things. So we're grateful for that as well. And appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Brooke.
Thank you.
It was an honor. Thank you.
Have a good day.
I'm dancing on the edge again. The wind is calling my name. I'm dancing on the edge again. This time I'm not looking back, babe. You can change me, you can tell me down. I'll leave echoes in every place I find. I break the molds with the rebels mind. I'm a hurricane of free, born mind.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only. The content shared is based on the experiences, opinions, and perspectives of the hosts and their guests and should not be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. The discussions and topics covered are intended to foster understanding and awareness of autism therapies, but are not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Before making any decisions regarding therapies or treatments, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare provider who can provide personalized recommendations based on your unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts, guests, and producers are not responsible for any consequences, damages, or outcomes arising from the use or application of any information during the show.